Welcome to the Dre on the Keys podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre Gosey. And today we have a great topic. Today's topic was actually brought up by my good friend, Charles Thomas. C Note. Mr. Sax, yo girl. Be sure to go show my boy C Note some love on Instagram at CNote07. And also be sure to follow his band at The City We Party. And also be sure to follow at __ Chemistry Live. And while I'm plugging bands, be sure to go follow at the Gumbo Jam. So I guess they're sponsoring this podcast. Hey, go support my sponsors now. But go show love to the bands. It's a community. We have to build it up. So, but we were at Marlowe's. I was telling Charles Thomas about the podcast, and he said he really enjoyed the second episode about practicing skills. And he was like, man, what would be a great episode is, he said, Dre, why don't you talk about making the transition from drums to keyboards? And I was like, oh, wow, I don't know if we have enough time, if I have enough hard drive space on my computer to talk about that transition. So for those that may not know, my first instrument was the drums. I've been playing the drums for as long as I can remember. My parents told me I would, as a small child, I would beat on the pots and pans. I would break those pots and use the spoons as drumsticks, and I had been playing for as long as I can remember. Just playing the drums. I was a drummer, and I played drums through middle school and marching band at Hartman Middle School. Shout out to Mr. Williams, my first drum teacher. Hey, Mr. Williams, you out there, if you listen to the podcast, hey, Mr. Williams, Mr. John Williams, bad man on the drums, excellent band director and teacher. I played drums all through high school, at Sterling High School under Mr. Woodson. Shout out to Mr. Woodson. Shout out to Kenny Hughes, our drum instructor over at Sterling High School. And I played drums at Texas Southern University. Shout out Funk Train FT. Shout out to GVE. Mr. Singleton. All my professors over there. Prof. Harris. Professor Sparks. Professor Alexander. Mr. Horace Alexander Young. All of the professors. Dr. Lee. Everybody. Too many to name. I got so many mentors. I'll have to do another episode about that. And I was blessed to play the drums for the city. The band, the city I've mentioned before. For about 9 or 10 years or so, I held down that drum throne, that drum chair, and passed it over to my homie AG. Shout out to AG. AG on the set. And was fortunate to, to do some drum competition, some things with Guitar Center. Went out to LA. You can check out that video on YouTube as well, but was a grand finalist and did many great things on the drums. And I still enjoy the drums and I still play the drums, here and there. But I guess it was around my what would that be, sophomore year in college. Around my sophomore year in college, I decided to, I took class piano, and we just did the basic 5-note scale, da 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 da. Simple 5 finger positions, and I did really well in that class. Did very well in that class, passed the class, and I was just messing around with the keys. And I think it was about in 2010, I left my home church, New Covenant Christian Church, and I went over to Christ Temple Apostolic Church. My boy Darius Owens, he hooked me up with the drum spot there. They were in transition in their ministry, so they brought me in. They also brought in Titus Robertson out of Louisville. If you don't know this guy, go you look him up on YouTube. Titus Robertson is killing. Before that, I was kind of messing with the keys and dibbling, dabbling with some chord here and there, you know. But then I heard Titus Robertson play the keys, and he played the organ at Christ Temple, and I was just blown away. I was mesmerized. I had never heard a keyboard player play with so much feel, and he had the runs, he had the chops, he had the chord voicings. I mean, he had the pocket. He was doing everything I was doing on the drums, on the keys. I mean, he had the sounds, he had the stacks, the layers. I mean, he knew the music. I mean, and I saw that guy and I said, I want to do that. Oh man, and then I was with my boy Jamal Ford. He bass player for the city at the time, my homie. We were really tight, and he told me about the Gospel Music Training Center. So I got an account with the Gospel Music Training Center, got on eBay, and I got me a Yamaha Motif 7. I still have that board to this day. And I got on Gospel Music Training Center, and under the instruction of JP, he was teaching all of the songs. I think I learned how to play How Great Is Our God in C sharp, and I learned I Just Want to Praise You, and I learned like some Israel stuff like Here I Am to Worship, and Lord You Are Good, learn my preacher chords in A flat, just the basic things to get through a church service. And then my homie Daniel Guerrero, he was at Logos on the southwest side. He called me like, man, we need a keyboard player. A little small church in the office building. And I'm like, okay, yeah, cool, I'm gonna do it. So I was doing that, playing there, at 9 a.m. and then heading over to play at Christ Temple at 11, and I did that for about 2 or 3 years. I'm just getting better, learning more songs. I'm not really studying, but I'm learning more songs. I'm working at it. I'm not working in the most effective way. We'll talk about that later. But I'm getting better. I'm learning songs. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And then it had to be in August of 20. My bishop from a home church called me, and he said, our minister of music is going on to start pastoring. We need a minister of music. God put you in my spirit. And I'm like, oh wow. And we go up to meet. He said, you know how to play organ? I said, a little bit. I had dibbling. I would get on the organ after church at Christ Temple, but I was learning. It's like, yeah, Minister Jen, our keyboard player here, she doesn't play the organ, and we need a organ player. So what he gave me, he said, I'm gonna give you the key and you can come and practice the organ anyway, and we're gonna make the transition in 2014 of February 2014. So I get one organ lesson with Mr. Derek Hall in September, and he showed me the drawbars, and he showed me how to play What a Friend We Have in Jesus in A flat with the left hand and the left foot. So I do that, and I start off, and I've been at New Covenant for 8 years now, man, playing organ, and it's just been a joy, just making that transition. So some of the key takeaways from being a drummer and going to keys. I believe the hardest thing to do is to shake that identity, is to is for other people to see you as a keyboard player. That, I believe, that is the first and biggest hurdle to cross, to where you're not just a drummer who plays keys, but you're actually taken seriously as a keyboard player and not just a drummer who just kind of dabbles on keys. That was one of the biggest barriers to cross, and it's a mindset thing. You really have to commit, and it takes a while, but it is a barrier. You have to find it in yourself first, and you have to say, I'm a board player. I am a keyboard player, and you got to keep going, even when people are like, oh man, you ain't no keyboard player. You not no board player. You a drum. What you doing on them keys? No, but you have to keep on going. Another hurdle or another realization is you have to cross is that, for me personally, keys is harder to play than drums, um, because you have to have all of the qualities and attributes that you need to play the drums. You need that on keys. You have to have a good solid sense of time. You have to play with good feel. You have to play with good technique, and you have to play with good articulation with inner beats and accents. But on top of that, you have melody, you have bass line, you have chords and chords voicings. So it's a lot more moving parts, more things to wrap your head around, which is really what drawing me to the keys, is the fact that you could play chords and you can play different lines. You had all the rhythmic interest of a drummer, but you had all of the melodic interest of like a horn player, and then you had the whole bass thing as well. If you don't have a bass player, you got your left hand, and then you have the whole harmonic aspect. So you have the whole gamut. You have all of that available to you. So just wrapping your head around, like, yeah, this is work. It's work, and there's a longer learning curve. There's a longer learning curve to being proficient on the keys than it is to being proficient on the drums, because you have 12 keys. You got to learn how to play on all your keys and everything. So what was really a really pivotal moment is when I got mentorship with Titus Robertson, and I got out of learning to play songs, focusing so much on playing songs, and really learning how to play the instrument, to learn how to be proficient on the keyboard. There's a difference there. There's a difference between just learning songs and actually learning the instrument. So I'll never forget, he had me working my major 9 chords, my minor 9 chords. He had me working my dominant 13, and he had me working sharp 9, sharp 5 chords, and then half diminished chords, and we would do it on. We'll move them in half steps, move them whole steps, minor thirds, fourths, fifths. We'll move them in half whole and whole half, and we would do that with the chord in the right hand and the bass note in the left, and we would do it with the chord in the left hand and the scale in the right, and then we do it with both chords hands together. And he just taught me how to really play the instrument and build up some technical proficiencies. Because one of the first things you'll notice, you'll learn a song off YouTube and they give you the chords, but if you listen to the records, it's so much more going on than just, you know, D flat in the left and blah blah blah, and you're right. No, they're playing lines. They're playing. They have language. So that was one of the turning points. Was, you know, really getting serious about playing my scales every day, playing through my chords every day, just doing those things, doing handing exercises every day. Then I believe the next turning point was when I really got serious about learning jazz and transcribing. When I got into jazz and transcribing other great jazz musicians, learning jazz solos, learning jazz language and jazz vocabulary, that was another big turning stone. And listening to the You'll Hear It podcast, shout out to the You'll Hear It podcast, listening to them and just learning what it takes to be a musician, you know, and developing a daily practice. Because, you know, I would practice sporadically. I would practice, you know, to get ready for church, but I didn't have a personal, just daily, you know, practice habit. So developing that, and then starting to plan my practices out in the Sessions app. You know, these were all game changers. That was really a game changer when I really started studying how to practice better, and putting different guidelines and procedures in place, and really developing a practice system that was my own. I started seeing more radical results. So that's the journey, you know. That's the journey from keys to drums, you know. You know, first making up your mind, making the decision that this is what you want to do. And second is ignoring the naysayers and the people that doubt you. And just really just staying committed to the journey, because it's a very incremental process as well. You won't see the growth, but if you look back 3 years and reflect, like, wow, I came way from there. You know, I used to couldn't even play in A natural. Now I can solo and flow and everything. So it's a process, a daily process, daily discipline. But I think the things that will get you there faster is being consistent, you know, putting in, you know, about 1 hour every day, 1 hour of practice, you know, prioritizing learning how to play your instrument versus just learning songs off of YouTube, but really learning your skills, learning your theory. Also, training your ear is a big part. One of the big difference from drums to keyboard, you have to be able to hear the key changes and hear melodies, and be able to pull out what's in your head to the instrument. So singing, that was a big one. Singing is very important. No matter how good or how bad your singing voice is, you have to be able to sing your idea, your musical idea, and then try to get it out into your hands. Now, this is a very hefty episode, and I believe I'm going to have to make a part 2, but we've kind of covered, you know, just the background, you know, starting on drums and then making that transition, ignoring the naysayers, staying consistent, building a consistent practice plan, setting a specific time each day that you're going to practice, and staying consistent and working it bit by bit. And if you keep on working, you stay consistent, even when it feels like you're stagnant, just keep on moving, keep trucking one foot in front of the other. I promise you, you will eventually get there. Practice slowly with that metronome, as always. Pay attention to the details, get some mentorship, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And it's been such a rewarding journey, you know, being able to play keys and play different gigs and do different recordings, and, you know, all of those things that are afforded, you know, just by being proficient on the instrument. And I practice daily, work hard daily, and I'm just enjoying the journey. There's no end point. It's just a journey. You learn a little bit every day. You grow, you learn, and you just keep on going. So, with that said, I think I'm going to end this one here. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to like and subscribe. Leave a rating to the podcast wherever you consume your podcast, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. As usual, I'm hungry. I'm looking for that piece of chicken. If you want to leave a small donation on Patreon, or a small donation on YouTube, on Cash App, it'll be greatly appreciated. But just by you listening, getting value out of it, I enjoy doing it, and I hope you all enjoy listening. And I'm learning, and I hope that you're learning, and we're growing, and I'm figuring out this podcast thing as I go. You know, the goal this February is 28 episodes. This is episode number 4, making the transition from drums to keys. I'm Dre on the keys, and I will see you all on the next one. Yes, sir.